Hello and welcome to the session where we'll be reviewing the Analytics ScratchPad. And this is a way for us to create sets of data and operate on the sets of data. We can do various things like data analytics and visualization, machine learning, and so on using this so-called ScratchPad. And just to review the interface, of course, you have some main paging buttons up here, and your controllers are on the left. So all your operators are done on the left-hand side here, and your results are rendered into the workspace. In the workspace, you'll see two main sections. So you'll see workspace variables up here. So you can select your different variables that are loaded in the workspace. And you can specify input and output variables as you are doing operations. So if you specify an output variable which is different to the input variable, then when you do the operation, it won't overwrite the input, it will create a new variable. So that's how you create variables here. Down here, we also have the program source code, so you can actually save your instruction set for processing data as a program. So we'll look at how to save the programs and so on. So let's refresh the screen and let's go ahead and first generate a data set. So on the left here, you have different groups of operations, and one of those operations is data source. So we want to create a data source to begin with. So towards that, we can see that we can specify the rows, the number of rows that we want in that data set. We can specify the column names. And here in generator, we specify the method for creating those columns. So if we specify an array of two numbers, then the system will create a set of randomly chosen numbers between these extrema, the minimum and maximum values. And here, if we specify the keyword course code, it will choose the course code. And if we simply specify a value, then it's going to use that value as a constant. And again, here's another array that's going to generate random numbers in that range for us. So if we click on generate, and by the way, there's a seed here. So this seed helps us to control how randomly the numbers are generated. So the numbers or the rows are randomly generated, but sometimes we want them to be consistently randomly generated. We want the same set of random numbers each time. So we can do that by specifying a seed. So it will automatically set a seed for us there. We can also specify the name of the output variable. And currently we have no input variables because we don't have any variables present currently in the workspace. So the system proposes to save the first bit of data as table 1. So let's accept that and let's click on generate here. Oh, and by the way, down here, there are templates. So if you choose a different template, then it will provide you with different settings so you can create other sets of data. Here, of course, we are just simulating the case of a set of students, of 100 students in a certain class in a certain year with the results there. So let's click generate, and we can see the result here. So other things that happened, we now have this table 1 as a variable in our workspace. We can choose it as an input, and we can edit this. So if we perform another operation, we can change this output variable and create a new variable from the new operation. So in here, we can view that variable. So that variable is actually a whole table of data. And we can see student numbers in the right ranges and results also in the right ranges there. So that's how we can generate a data set. There are other options. We could load from Excel files or CSV files. We can load from a database or from an API and so on. So that's our data set there. And now let's do an operation on this. Let's say we want to classify these results and we want to set certain specific values. for marks in specific ranges. So to do that, we click on Table Editor, and we have to define a function here. So to define this function, we will understand that a variable that will exist in this function is the row object, which is written simply as robj. So I'm just going to put in a little function here, and we can expand the view a bit. And if you read this function, we can see that if your result is less than 50, we will set a new attribute called status. So we'll say row object or robj dot status equals 4. So if we have a result less than 50, then we'll create a status value of 4. If it's less than 70 and more than 50, that's what that means, or more than or equal to 50, then we set a 3 and then a 2 and a 1 if it's above 80. So we have defined a function which can now give us a new attribute status. And let's save this result in a new table. So let's call that table 2. And let's, so we can just click on apply to run that. So if we say apply, we can see now we have a new status variable. Here we can see that the result, when it's less than 50, we want a value of 4. So we can see it's done that right. Here's a value just above 50. So that should be a 3, as we can see here, and so on. So that's a new table we've created. If we click here, we can see the previous table is still present. If we hadn't changed the variable when we ran this, then it would simply overwrite the old table. Right, so that's one simple operation we can perform. And then let's do another, let's say column operations. And let's add a number of standard deviations. So let's calculate the number of standard deviations away from the mean. So we choose the result, and we can say add Z column. So when we do that, we find the whole block jumps down here, and that's because the system is trying to keep this on the same row, but the only way to do that is to create more space by jumping down here. So it's added now this extra column, result Z. So when we choose to add a Z column, and we've chosen to do it on the result field, then it will add it as result Z, and we can see the number of standard deviations away from the mean result calculated here. So in the background, the system has calculated the mean over all these values. By the way, there are really 100 rows here. So this is a live table, and you can filter it and all the usual things. So it has calculated the mean and standard deviation over the result, and it's used that to calculate the Z value for the results, the number of standard deviations away from the mean. So that's the new column there. Let's now let's do another operation. So let's say we want to use a certain machine learning algorithm that uses the status value as a feature, but it doesn't expect the status value to be listed as a categorical variable. It wants a Boolean variable. So if we want Boolean variables, so we want to do that there. If we want Boolean variables, then we want to do one-hot encoding. So we click one-hot, and now the table has jumped back up here because now there are many more columns. And so it can't handle, it can't give us all the data just as one row. It's accepted that, and so it's hidden it behind these little pluses here. So we can see is status 3, is status 2. If we look at this row, your status is 1. So we can see is status 1, that's true. And is status 4, is status 2, those are all zeros. So it seems to be one hot encoding correctly. Here's another one. Status is 3. So is status 3? That's a 1. Is status 2? That's a 0, and so on. So it's one hot encoded correctly there. Right, so those are just some operations, and there are many more operations available in other parts of this. But now let's look at what happened on the code side. So as we were choosing operations here, those operations were being recorded in the background, and so a little program has built up here. And we can save this program. So by the way, each of these are the different steps. We can see there is an initialization, which we didn't explicitly instruct, but that's implicit to each program. So we initialize, which basically means the workspace is cleared. Then we did generate we generated a data set. And by the way, you can edit any of these values here. And then if you just click on, if you click on this little save or update symbol here, then those changes will be committed to that instruction. So as we click through here, we can see there's that function that we inserted, and there's the Z values applied to the field result. So if you read this closely enough, you'll see that it does correspond with the instruction that we gave it in the program. So that's our little program. And now we would like to save this program. So let's save this as program 1. And so we enter that as a name. We can also write a description here. But I'm just going to click on the save button, which is this little plus here. So if you click on that, then it's going to save this program. And the saved programs are down here. So to find the saved programs, click on this search icon. And we can see a couple of other programs that I had written. And here's the program here. So as we click on these various programs, it will load that program into the workspace there. So that's the program loaded. And to run the program, we just click on this execute button. So you click on that and you go back to the workspace. Well, we don't really see a difference because that is what we had done anyway. So let's go ahead and refresh the page and try and reload the program that way. So let's refresh. Right, so we see the workspace is empty. So let's go to our programs. You can see it's suggesting a new program here, but we want to load our program. So click on search, and that's the one we want. And so that's loaded. And now if we say execute the program and go back to the workspace, you can see the tables that we had created. That's all there. So this program has been saved. So that's how we can do some operations on our data sets, how we can manage our workspace variables, and how we can save our programs. So that's the starting point for us. And in future videos, we'll review some of the other functionality that's available, some of the other operations we can do on the data in our data sets. Thanks for listening.